What can the Super Bowl teach us about B2B sales? We're going to talk about it today, and also this really obnoxious LinkedIn trend that happens that, undoubtedly, if you're on social media today, you're seeing some content around the Super Bowl. If you're listening to this episode forever from now, it's the day after the Super Bowl where the Chiefs got absolutely smammered by the Eagles. It wasn't pretty, but we're going to dive into what people are doing with content today and how the Super Bowl has anything to do with it. If you're a first-time listener to the show, my name's Blake Benz. I'm the host of the Good Advice podcast, and you've come to the right place to learn how to grow and scale your business. No fluff on this podcast, just good advice. Before we dive in, we have a word from one of the amazing businesses that sponsors the podcast. Check out this quick ad, and don't forget, you can also support the podcast on our Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in a moment. There's one single piece of advice that I give to business owners who are ready to scale their business drastically. And that's knowing exactly what you need to hand off so that you can continue focusing on what you're an expert in. It amazes me when I talk to business owners who are doing their own bookkeeping and tax prep, and worse, that they're going through all this paperwork at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, even midnight, slaving away trying to make sense of all of the numbers for their business. Business owners who are making it happen have already figured out that you can't do it all yourself. That's why I recommend Steve Lay with Equity Business Solutions. Not only is he an expert in bookkeeping and tax prep, but what I love about Steve is that he'll sit down with you and help you make sense of the value of your business beyond just reading a spreadsheet. You'll be able to make better decisions, and more importantly, you're going to save yourself the crucial time you would have spent going through QuickBooks or an Excel spreadsheet or whatever it is that keeps us up late at night. So save yourself some time and some money by giving Steve Lay a call at Equity Business Solutions, and he'll show you the value beyond your numbers. Go to equitybusinesssolutionsllc.com to find out more. So what can the Super Bowl teach you about B2B sales? What can the Super Bowl teach us about business, about life? Well, the answer is nothing. Nothing. It was a football game. And I'm laughing because already, I'm recording this episode on the day after the Super Bowl, and I'm already seeing all this content around being ready in business, being prepared, taking on your competition, all of these things that, and by the way, this isn't me like being overly curmudgeon-y about the whole thing. I get why people do this. They take a semi-relevant concept and they talk about it in a way that seems at least somewhat relatable. Well, a few weeks ago, I did an episode that was called When What Works Doesn't Work. And the whole premise of that was how we as business owners were always looking for greater lessons, life lessons, and things that really don't offer anything that insightful. At the end of the day, the Super Bowl was basically a football game. It was a football game between two teams where one absolutely dominated the other one. So certainly, I could very easily get up this morning and, pound out a post about being unprepared in life and how your competition is just waiting to take you out. But maybe I'm overly hipster about this kind of stuff. I get a little tired of how much we try to find life lessons in almost everything. And if I was going to sum up the point of today's episode, I would say to not be overly drawn by the sheen and shine of some of this content. Sometimes people say things that sound very pithy. They sound very, like I said earlier, relatable. And we find ourselves nodding, being like, wow, that's so true. But when you actually think about it, you're like, well, wait a second. What the heck does that mean? I was having dinner with a friend of mine last week, and my wife said a meaningful phrase that she had heard. And I was nodding, yeah, that's so good. Well, then my friend goes, well, what the heck does that mean? What is that? And we were kind of giving him a hard time for being like, well, I mean, obviously, you know what it means. And he was like, but what does it mean? And then we started talking. It led us on this segue of talking about really popular expressions, or when you're listening to someone who's giving a speech or giving a talk or what have you, and they say something that sounds very motivational and it compels something in you, but whenever you actually stop and think about it, you're like, what? What? What is that? A good example would be something like instead of asking yourself how many new customers you can earn, ask yourself instead, who's that one new customer worthy of being earned? Which that was totally off the top of my head, which is probably not a great example, but you throw something out like that, and there's always someone who's like, "Yeah, wow, so true. Yeah, wow, man." You see this sometimes on Facebook too, where someone posts something totally preposterous, and I think actually, by the way, this is all bot content. I'm almost certain that a lot of this is just bot content, which just feeds into our internet. The internet is dead theory about, eventually we're going to have very little actual authentic dialogue. And instead, all of these, virtue signaling comments are people who are just like, yes, wow. But I read some of these comments that people are like in chorus, just agreeing with how meaningful something is. And then I read the actual post and I'm like, what does this actually mean? What is this? And I'm worried that we are looking too heavily for that shiny thing, for that exciting thing, rather than just sticking to the tried and true things that really work. I mean, this has been the premise of the podcast since day one. A little bit of the backstory of the Good Advice podcast was one of the examples. I've told this story before a million times, but one of the instances that led to the style of the podcast was I was meeting with an HR director, and we were talking about her team members. We were talking about her senior leaders, and she was talking essentially about how we can't keep talent. People are quitting, and they just don't stick around. Our employees don't stick around, and they're typically unhappy. Their time with us is short lived, and we're looking for a way to fix that. So I jumped into diagnosis mode of just trying to figure out more about what's happening. So I was asking, tell me a little bit about your managers. Tell me about like how the culture is. Tell me about their EQ, their emotional intelligence, which is a great concept, by the way. If you manage it anyway, this is a great concept to dig into. So I start to name off some things, just trying to get a better feel for what's going on. And she holds up her hands and she's like, "Oh, no, 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 no. Hang on. We've actually like done trainings on all that kind of stuff. I just want to know what's new. What's the latest thing? What's the newest thing on getting happy employees?" And I kind of laughed. I was like, well, I guess we could call it something new, but at the end of the day, people stay or leave for almost all the same reasons. People stay in a work environment that they feel valued monetarily and personally. They leave companies where they don't feel valued. And it's really not that much more complicated than that. Sure, there's nuanced situations where, someone has to move or relocate or what have you. It's, their current career no longer aligns with where they're going in life. All that stuff's totally fine. But I found myself kind of laughing at, are we really like gonna wordsmith what this is rather than understanding that we don't need to talk fluff about this. We just need to talk about the nuts and bolts of what's really happening. So instances like that is why I started the podcast, because I was like, man, we got to stop chasing these motivational things or these aspirational concepts. And let's actually talk about what's going on in your business. Now, for some people, that's been a pain point. For some of my potential customers, for my best customers, it's been a real asset because we literally cut down straight to, hey, this is what's going on. This is what's really happening. And let's really talk about it. Well, on social media today, these kinds of things simply are not sexy enough. They don't capture people's attention enough. And so what happens is it can't really be that simple. Instead, you get these overly sensationalized headlines, people who are posting about these greater life lessons from watching the Super Bowl. I see it where, people have really countercultural, buzzing headlines to try to catch someone's attention. So someone will say, direct sales is dead. Cold calling is dead. Direct mailers is dead. SEO is dead. Marketing, internet marketing is dead. Like all these like generic categories of how we do business. And all it is really is to capture someone's attention. And really more importantly, it's to capture the attention of the person who does not like doing those things. So the person who does the headline cold calling is dead, this is typically going to be one of two people, either the person who does cold calling exclusively, who sees it as controversial, and this is engagement bait for that person, or it's someone who hates cold calling and they're thinking, oh, thank goodness, finally an answer of something I can do that will not require me to have to cold sell to someone. Well, in one example of this, unrelated to cold sales, but here's something that got posted on LinkedIn just, this was 2 weeks ago. And I'm not going to say the guy's name, but I'm just going to read this post to you to give you a sense of of where this is happening, what this looks like. So here's the LinkedIn post. My daughter walked away from a car crash last week with only bruises on her leg. She was being driven to work by a colleague who didn't know the roads and was driving too fast. It's a miracle she's alive. Okay, so you have this guy who has just posted about his daughter apparently almost dying in a car crash. And, all the drama of the person driving going too fast and what's going to happen. So he writes to that point, and then he says, it got me thinking about businesses I see daily who are heading for a car crash in 2025, barely surviving, no systems, and no guide with experience leading them to a better place. We all need a guide or coach. Let's see what we can't see and make sure we drive our business in the right direction. I've been growing businesses for 25 years. If you need help, be sure to reach out. Let's make sure you don't have a car crash this year. So let's be really candid and clear on a couple of things. First of all, I don't know this person. I'm never going to do business with this person. I'm never going to talk to this person. I have no ill will towards this person. So this isn't to bash this person specifically. But let's be really clear about something. Chances are this didn't happen at all, first of all, only because that is 98% of content and stories you see on social media is, and I'm not even knocking people who embellish a little bit, but I had a mentor once the way he described it is there's people who caught a fish that was this big and they talk about it as if it was much larger. And then there's people who never caught a fish, but talk about the fish that they caught. And most stories on social media is that second one. It's this is what happened and here's what I learned from it. Most of the time it never happened. But let's talk about the oddness of this. Your family member, even if it did happen, your family member is in a life-threatening situation and it gets tweaked and twisted for a social media insight. There's really no connection between your daughter almost dying in a car crash and businesses that have no systems and are failing. There's really no connection there. What does a young girl dying in a car crash have to do with the SOPs that a business has? The answer is none, nothing. But see, as business owners and as social media consumers, we are drawn to these stories. We're drawn to these stories because they are dramatic. They make us feel a certain way. In some cases, they are interesting. In other cases, they are, I mentioned this phrase earlier, engagement bait. You may have heard of it as rage bait. It's content presented in a way to get you to engage, knowing you will disagree. This would be like someone posting on LinkedIn saying something like, I will never pay anyone more than minimum wage. Anyone who wants more than minimum wage is greedy and selfish. So therefore, I will never pay. In fact, if anyone wanted more than minimum wage, they should pay me. Now, Can you imagine if someone posted this? Actually, people would, pitchforks, right? People would be like, "What's wrong with you? You're crazy." A lot of times people post stuff like that, not because they genuinely feel that way. They're trying to create engagement and an enormous amount of engagement. Another example is there are, man, not to get too in the weeds, but you may have seen something like this on Instagram. There are people who have like cooking channels or cooking pages where they do a recipe and they brutalize it. It is so offensive. This would be like someone making a pasta and soaking the noodles in Pepsi beforehand. And the person, bold face, totally confident, gets in front of the camera and says, "Hey, here's a cool new trick you may not have known. If you soak your noodles in Pepsi before you cook them, you actually get this," and then they'll actually make the recipe right there. It's not an authentic it's not authentic. It is to create engagement of people being like, "He can't be serious," or "She can't be serious," and "No way," and then even, again, the bot comments, "Love it. Wow. Gonna try this," all the random stuff. So point being, there is no shortage of content that is going to tell you what to do, what to think, how to approach your business. And you have to first of all, you have to develop your BS detector. But second of all, here's my request for you all who are listening today. You have to be able to take off the sheen and shine of what someone is saying to really get to the bottom, to really get to the point, the crux of what's being said. And this isn't to be like overly analytical where every post you see now, it's like, what did that really, that would be exhausting. However, I've seen a number of business owners get caught up in decision making, get caught up in shiny objects because they read a post. Because here's actually a very specific example. Okay. I'll give a very specific example for something. And this isn't anything against Alex Hormozy, but a lot of entrepreneurs know who Alex Hormozy is. Alex Hormozy, if you don't know, he's a very popular entrepreneurial figure today who sells, he used to run a number of gyms. Now he does a bunch of entrepreneurial tools, things like that. Nothing wrong with the guy. Okay. I don't have any issue with the guy. But one of the ads that popped up on my phone, or maybe this was a social media post, I can't remember, but it was on how do you find new customers for your business? And he said, it's so simple. Open your phone, go to your contacts, and for every contact in your phone that has an email, send them a cold email. Send them an email with what your offer is. That's the easiest way to connect with people. So you, as the average person, you see that, you open your phone, you email all those people, and then you're frustrated that it didn't work. Why didn't it work? Because there's more nuance than the shiny, simple, silver bullet-esque answer of just message everyone in your phone. What if the only numbers in your phone are people that you knew in high school or college? What if what you sell is an incredibly niched, industry-specific thing? What if everyone in your phone, none of them own businesses, and yet what you sell is specifically for business owners? Now, again, there's nothing wrong. I'm doing air quotes over here. There's nothing wrong with this. Alex Hormozy is not giving bad advice. And frankly, he probably knows quite a bit more than I do about business, considering I'm pretty sure this guy's like a giga millionaire. But the point is, though, is that as business owners, we are attracted to and we consume content that oversimplifies and over pizzazzes very complex things in business. Sales is hard. Running a business is hard. And there is no hack or silver bullet that makes it easier. It's just difficult. It really is just difficult. And if it was easy, everyone would do it. If it was easy, everyone would be starting businesses. The reason they don't, and because they have such a high failure rate, I think it's 80% by year 5 will have failed, is because they are incredibly difficult. There's nothing easy about it. So don't get swept away by really quippy, exciting posts. Don't, run to your spouse or your best friend or your, networking group or what have you with the latest, greatest thing that someone popped up. And don't be overly moved by things that seem very relevant and relatable, but ultimately don't have much substance to them. Now, if you're listening and maybe you're a marketer, maybe you're a social media person, maybe you write copy, hear what I'm saying. I'm not saying there's something wrong with your industry. I'm not saying that if you posted about the Super Bowl today and you made some insight, you put up a post that said, man, the Chiefs got destroyed. Hey, I try to help people not get destroyed in business. Give me a call. I have no cynical lens on people who are doing that. Okay. I have no qualms with that person. And if nothing else, I am a fan. I'm pro anybody grinding and try to make their business work. Okay. You do you. What I'm talking about is the business owner who gets swept up, distracted, and mesmerized by fluff. And if you're going to make it in this world, if you're going to make it in business, man, you got to hone and define the fluff detector. You have to hone and define what's a bunch of fluff, what doesn't have substance, and ultimately what is not going to lead you to a better, more profitable business. Hey, that's today's Good Advice podcast episode. As always, I so appreciate you tuning in today. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. But what the heck are you waiting on? Click that subscribe or follow button so you can keep getting good advice wherever you are. Don't forget, you can always support us on our Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. Or for your business, you want to advertise on the show, you can always reach out, blake@goodadvicecoaching.com. Hey, I appreciate you. Man, it hurts to see my Chiefs go down so hard, but there's always next year. Thanks for listening today. That's today's Good Advice. We'll see you.